I was standing in my son's kitchen, carefully slicing the last of the lamb shoulder I had roasted overnight, when I heard the sound that would change everything. Jason, my only son, lifted his glass of wine, his voice louder than usual with celebration and alcohol. "If nobody wants seconds, we'll just feed it to the dogs." The room erupted in laughter. I froze. The serving spoon slipped from my hand and hit the tile with a metallic thud that seemed to echo louder than all the noise in the dining room. In that moment, the weight of 24 hours of cooking, $800 of my own money, and decades of unseen labor pressed down on me. I began packing every dish I had made, calm and deliberate. I walked out of the party without another word, but 3 hours later I was plating the most important meal of my life. My name is Mae Thompson, and I am 65 years old. For as long as I can remember, cooking has been my way of loving people. After my husband Walter passed away 2 years ago, the kitchen became my only language left to speak with the world. Every recipe I touched carried pieces of him, of our years together, of the family we raised. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being seen. To Jason and his wife Sloan, I became less a person and more a service. Need an extra dish? Call Mom. Hosting a big group. She'll handle it. The requests came without gratitude, without even asking, just assumptions that I would give, and give again. I lived on Social Security, stretching every dollar, dreaming of one small apartment of my own, with a porch where I could sit quietly without feeling like an intruder in my son's house. That dream always seemed out of reach until that night when his careless joke pushed me to see myself differently. The night before the party, while most of the city slept, I was awake in the kitchen. At midnight I set beef bones to simmer, coaxing broth rich with rosemary and thyme. By 3 in the morning I was peeling carrots and dicing onions, the knife moving with the ease of someone who had cooked for decades. At 5, I slid 2 lamb shoulders into the oven, their seasoned crust filling the house with a fragrance that reminded me of the restaurant I once dreamed of opening but never did. The work was endless. Stuffed portobello mushrooms lined a tray at 7. By 8, chocolate mousse was cooling in the refrigerator, while asparagus waited for a drizzle of hollandaise. I whisked by hand until my arm throbbed. My counters disappeared under lists and portions, careful calculations for 43 guests. Every new text from Sloan added more names to the list: her book club, Jason's college friends, neighbors I didn't know. No one asked if it was possible. They simply assumed I would stretch myself thinner. $867 gone from my savings, money I had quietly set aside for that apartment with the park view. All of it spent to create a feast I wasn't sure anyone would even notice. By the time Jason wandered into the kitchen that morning, my back already ached from hours of bending and lifting. He poured himself a mug of coffee and glanced at the trays stacked high with food. "Smells incredible in here, Mom. You didn't have to go this crazy." Sloan ordered some appetizers from downtown just to supplement. Supplement. The word hit harder than I expected, as though my roasted lamb, twice-baked potatoes, and carefully crafted desserts were not enough, just filler behind store-bought crackers and cheese. I kept whisking, though my hollandaise broke into yellow streaks that refused to come together. "I'd been planning for 43 people, Jason," I said, sharper than I intended. He gave me that expression I'd grown used to lately, mild surprise, like he'd forgotten I was capable of opinions at all. "Okay, Mom, whatever you think is best." Whatever I think is best, words meant to smooth things over, not to listen, not to value, only to keep me quiet. By late afternoon, guests began to arrive in a steady stream. The living room filled with laughter, the clink of wine glasses, and the hum of conversations between people I barely knew. From the kitchen doorway, I watched Sloan glide through the crowd in her red dress, her smile polished and effortless. She accepted compliments for the decor, for the atmosphere, even for the food. "The lamb is incredible," I heard a neighbor say, balancing a plate. "Thank you so much," Sloan replied without hesitation, as if she had been the one marinating and roasting since dawn. I carried fresh platters to the table, setting them down beside untouched trays of store-bought crackers and cheese. Guests reached for the lamb, the vegetables, the mouse, and turned their praise toward Sloan. Every "what a beautiful party" and "this is amazing" was directed her way. Meanwhile, I moved silently in the background, washing dishes, refilling trays, keeping the evening afloat. Invisible in my own kitchen, I watched others take credit for the very work that had drained me to exhaustion. To them, I wasn't a guest or even a host. I was part of the service. The party had reached its peak by early evening. Plates were scattered across the table, wine glasses half full, laughter rising above the music. I was in the kitchen, slicing the last of the lamb for seconds, when Jason's voice rang out from the dining room, louder than usual, buoyed by celebration. "Well, if nobody wants more, we'll just feed it to the dogs." The room erupted. Cheerful, careless laughter filled the air. I froze. The serving spoon slipped from my hand and clattered onto the tile, echoing through the kitchen like a verdict. 24 hours of labor, $800 of my savings, sleeplessness, aching arms, and now, my food reduced to a joke about scraps. I stood motionless, my chest tightening as the laughter carried on without pause. Sloane's giggle rose above the rest, light and musical. To them it was funny. To me it was the moment something broke that could never be mended. I bent down and picked up the spoon, the metal cool in my hand. Instead of setting it back, I reached for the aluminum pan stacked in the corner. My movements were calm, deliberate, almost rehearsed. I slid the lamb into one pan, then the roasted vegetables, then the stuffed mushrooms. Each dish I had poured myself into was carefully returned to its container. Jason appeared in the doorway, his smile fading when he saw what I was doing. "Mom, what are you doing?" "Taking the food home," I answered, still packing. "What? Why? That was just a joke." "You said you'd feed it to the dogs," I replied, finally meeting his eyes. "I wouldn't want to deprive them." His face reddened, his words stumbling. "Mom, please don't be ridiculous." "Ridiculous," I repeated quietly, stacking another container. Yes, it was ridiculous of me to think my cooking mattered more than scraps. The room behind him had fallen quiet. I could feel eyes turning toward us, the party's laughter replaced by awkward silence. I lifted the last box into my arms and walked past my son, past Sloane, past the stunned guests. Not one of them tried to stop me. The night air was sharp as I loaded the containers into my old sedan. My phone buzzed before I even turned the key. A call from Noah, my nephew. His voice cracked with panic the moment I answered. "Aunt May, thank God. I'm in trouble. My head chef just called out fever, can't stand up. Tonight's the Ford wedding reception. 80 guests, plated dinner, and I've got nothing." I could picture him pacing in the small bar of his restaurant, running a hand through his hair like he used to when he was a boy. "What about your sus chef?" I asked. "Broken wrist. I've got 2 kids on the line who can barely handle appetizers. I'm going to have to cancel. If I do, the lawsuit will sink me." 5 years of work gone in one night. His voice broke. I looked at the stacked pans around me, lamb, roasted vegetables, potatoes, mouse, all dismissed as dog food only an hour before. Enough to feed a crowd. Enough to rescue a wedding. "What's the menu?" I asked. Noah hesitated. "Prime rib with red wine reduction, salmon, roasted vegetables, Duchess potatoes, and chocolate raspberry tart." I did the math. My lamb could be reworked, the potatoes repurposed, the mouse turned into tarts. "I'm 15 minutes away," I told him, starting the car. "Preheat your ovens. Tonight we're going to save that wedding." When I pulled into the back lot of Creekside Kitchen, Noah was already waiting, his vest half-buttoned, his face pale with stress. "Aunt May, how much food did you make?" he asked, staring at the containers filling my back seat. "Apparently too much," I said, handing him the first pan. "This lamb can stand in for prime rib if we slice it right. Do you have stock for reduction?" "Everything. The kitchen's fully stocked," he replied, trailing me inside. The line cooks looked up, wide-eyed, as I surveyed the counters. It wasn't a home kitchen, it was smaller, tighter, but built for efficiency. I rolled up my sleeves, set the pans on stainless steel, and began giving orders. "We'll reseason the lamb, thin slices, fanned on plates. Vegetables, garnish and shine. Potatoes piped into Duchess form, crisp edges. Mouse into tarts, get raspberries now." For the first time all day I felt steady. In this kitchen I wasn't invisible. I was in charge. By 7:30 the first plates left the pass. Thin slices of lamb, glistening under a red wine reduction, rested beside Duchess potatoes piped into golden peaks. Roasted vegetables framed the plate like jewels, and the chocolate mousse, reborn as tarts with fresh raspberries, gleamed under the dining room lights. Servers carried the dishes out, and within minutes the room filled with the low hum of approval. Laughter returned, but this time it was paired with praise. The prime rib is phenomenal, one server reported, stacking empty plates. Table 6 wants to thank the chef personally. From the service window, I saw the bride and groom raising glasses, their smiles wide, their families beaming with pride. The kind of joy that reminded me why food mattered in the first place. For years, my efforts had been background noise. Tonight, for the first time, people asked not just about the food, but about me, the person who had created it. After dessert plates were cleared and the last toast echoed through the dining room, a woman in her early 60s appeared at the kitchen door. Her silver hair was swept back neatly, and her eyes carried the calm confidence of someone used to making decisions. She extended her hand. "I'm Dana Whitmore," she said. "Our foundation hosted tonight's wedding. I had to thank you personally. You saved this evening?" I wiped my hands on my apron, suddenly self-conscious. I just stepped in to help my nephew. I'm glad it worked out. Worked out, she gave a soft laugh. This was exceptional. Where did you train? I didn't. Just a lifetime of cooking. She studied me a long moment, as though weighing not just my words but everything behind them. Then she pressed a card into my hand. "We host major events year-round: galas, fundraisers, corporate dinners. We've been disappointed with our catering company lately. If you're open to it, I'd like to see what you could do for us. Start with something small. 40 guests next Friday." I stared at the card, her name embossed in gold. It wasn't just thanks. It was a door I had never thought might open for me. For 3 days, Dana's card sat in my purse like a secret I wasn't ready to claim. I carried it with me to the grocery store, to the laundry, even to bed, the edges pressing into the fabric whenever I reached for my wallet. I told myself I was just waiting for the right moment. The truth was, I was afraid. What if I failed? What if stepping into something new at 65 proved I wasn't capable after all? On Tuesday morning, I walked to the farmer's market. Usually my shopping was practical, whatever Jason's family needed, whatever stretched the budget. But that day, I filled a basket with things just for me: heirloom tomatoes, a loaf of fresh sourdough, a bunch of flowers I had no reason to buy other than they were beautiful. At the tomato stall, I ran into an old friend, Nancy, who had worked with Walter years ago. She looked me over with sharp eyes. "May, what's wrong?" The practiced words "nothing, I'm fine" rose to my lips, but for once I didn't use them. I told her everything: the party, Jason's joke, my walkout, the wedding I had saved. She listened without interruption, then put her hand firmly on my arm. "Call that woman May. Don't waste another day." That evening, when I walked back into my house, Jason and Sloan were waiting on the living room couch. They looked like they belonged there, comfortable, expectant, as if my silence these past days had been an inconvenience. "There you are," Sloan said, her smile thin. "We've been calling. We thought maybe there was some miscommunication about Saturday." "Miscommunication?" I repeated, setting down my bag. Jason joked about feeding my food to the dogs. Everyone laughed. Jason shifted, hands in his pockets like a boy caught doing something wrong. "Mom, it came out wrong." "I'm sorry, the food was great. We were just joking around." Sloan leaned forward. "Why don't we do Sunday dinner this week? Invite my parents? Make it a family thing. Start fresh." I looked at them both, steady and calm. "I'm busy Sunday." "Busy?" Jason frowned. "Doing what?" "Working," I said. "And from now on, that's not something I'll apologize for." Friday evening arrived faster than I expected. At the Riverfront Country Club, I walked through marble halls with Dana at my side, my chef's coat crisp, my knives carefully packed. 40 donors were gathering in a private dining room, and the main course was mine to deliver. The kitchen was larger than anything I had worked in, gleaming with polished steel and humming with staff. For a moment, nerves caught my breath, but then I fell into rhythm, checking oven temperatures, reducing wine for the sauce, adjusting seasoning with the confidence that came from years behind a stove. "Duck, medium rare, table 7, I called, plating with precision. The staff responded quickly, following my lead as though they had always known me. When the last plates went out, the dining room glowed with satisfied conversation. For once, I wasn't a shadow in the kitchen. I was the reason the evening felt complete. As the last plates were cleared, Dana introduced me to a tall man at table 3. His silver hair and tailored suit spoke of old money, but his handshake was warm. "Mitchell Hayes," he said. "I wanted to thank the chef personally. That duck was exceptional. I'm hosting a fundraiser for the Children's Hospital next month. 200 guests, seated dinner. Would you be interested?" 200. The number hit me like a wave. My hands trembled slightly, though I clasped them behind my back. "That's quite large," I managed. He smiled knowingly. "I can tell when food has been crafted by real talent. We'll provide full staff and give you creative control." Later, back in the quiet of the prep room, my phone buzzed. A text from Sloan: "We need to talk. I'm pregnant." I stared at the message, the meaning clear. They needed me again: free childcare, free cooking, free labor. The old May would have answered immediately. This time I turned the phone face down. The next morning, I walked into the leasing office of a modest apartment complex I had admired for years. Sunlight spilled across the front desk as the manager slid a key across the counter. "Unit 3 billion, Parkview." My hands shook as I picked it up. For the first time in decades, I held a key to a place that was mine alone. No shared space, no borrowed corners, just mine. With Dana's check safely deposited, I bought chef's coats that actually fit in a sturdy knife roll. On my kitchen table, I spread out menus for upcoming events: the Children's Hospital fundraiser, a corporate dinner for 50, and 2 weddings that had come through referrals. The numbers didn't lie. What I once thought was impossible was now real income, real independence. Sunday came and went without me at Jason and Sloan's table. Instead, I was at my own desk writing shopping lists and timing courses. For the first time, my future felt like something I was building, not something I was sacrificing for. 6 months later, I stood in a kitchen that bore my name, May's Table. Sunlight streamed through tall warehouse windows, gleaming off stainless steel counters and shelves lined with my own equipment. The walls carried framed photos from events I had catered: weddings, fundraisers, corporate galas, each one a reminder that my work mattered. Noah had joined me as a partner, and a young cease chef named Anya handled prep with skill and confidence. Clients booked months in advance, word spreading faster than I could have imagined. One morning, I unfolded a newspaper and saw my own face smiling back. "Local chef finds late career success," the headline read. I looked at the photo, me in crisp whites, hands resting on the counter, and hardly recognized the woman staring back. She looked like someone who had finally stepped into the life she was meant to live. One afternoon, as lunch prep wound down, I looked up to see Jason standing in the doorway of my kitchen. He wore his office suit, out of place among the aprons and clattering pans. His eyes moved slowly across the room, taking in the walk-in cooler, the gleaming ovens, the staff moving with practiced rhythm. "Mom," he said quietly, "I had no idea it was like this. A real business. I'm proud of you." He hesitated, then added, "I owe you an apology. Not just for that night, for years of taking you for granted." I nodded. "Thank you, but understand something, I'm available now only for what I choose. Not for what you expect." Jason lowered his gaze, then looked back with sincerity I hadn't seen in years. "I want a relationship with you, not your service." A week later, my phone buzzed with a call I didn't expect. Sloan's name glowed on the screen. I almost let it ring, but curiosity made me answer. "May," her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "I saw the article. Congratulations." "Thank you," I said, cautious. There was a pause before she continued. "I want to apologize for the way we treated you, for not seeing you, for taking you for granted." For a long moment I didn't speak. Hearing those words was like feeling a locked door finally open. "The baby's kicking now," she added. "Would you like to feel it sometime?" I smiled. "I'd like that. But next time, come to my apartment. I'll cook." There was another pause, then a quiet laugh. "I'd like that too." Looking back, I realized this story wasn't just about food or family, it was about worth. For years, I thought being needed was the same as being valued. But there's a difference. Here's what I've learned. Boundaries spoken with calmness can change everything. Skills you've practiced quietly for years can open doors when you least expect it. Family ties matter, but respect matters more. Repair is possible, but only when people are willing to see you for who you are, not just what you provide. I hope my story reminds you that it's never too late to choose yourself. Whether you're 65 or 25, your value doesn't disappear just because others overlook it. Sometimes it only takes one moment of courage to change the rest of your life. In the end, my revenge wasn't about anger. It wasn't about taking anything away from Jason or Sloan. It was about finally taking my own life back. I built something that gave me dignity, independence, and a voice I hadn't used in years. The best answer to being dismissed wasn't fury, it was creation. Not destruction, but choice. I chose to step forward instead of staying invisible, and that choice changed everything. If my story speaks to you, I'd love to know, what boundary are you ready to set in your own life? Share it in the comments below. And if you'd like to hear more stories where ordinary people reclaim their worth, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs a reminder. It's never too late to choose yourself.